Hey!
Hallo, sir.
Hallo, hallo.
Oh,
How's it going, Maple?
always good, always good. Waiting for your awesome classes while I'm getting some green fingers. And you also had a good day today.
Yes, sir. I've been working on a road generator. It's running quite
So
nicely.
automatically a road, like concrete, or how we call this in Dutch, asphalt, or how do I need to see it?
But yeah, for now it's like concrete with like texture as a sidewalk. It has like a guardrail, light posts. So I wanna the foundation is set. I wanna turn that into something that like you can change, for example, what type of road it's gonna be. Dirt roads or
But
like
then you're going to make so many people happy, man. Because people that are tinkering around with cars, for example, then you have directly a road ready to test with your car. Zoom!
exactly. Yeah, you can just draw your roads. You can draw it on surfaces. So I think it's gonna be an enjoyable generator. Hopefully,
Oh,
yes, sir. Um. So let's. I guess we can start, right?
yeah, if you start, I hop down and I'll start the recording. You're also today on Twitter, and I understand if everything goes good, you're also on YouTube. So have fun, sir.
Ooh, very nice. Everything. All right. Let me enable my screencast. Where is it? Uh, too many, too many add-ons going on. There we go. It's a stream. Beautiful. All right, you should be able to see that now. And I want to start off with a little, well, let's say a little information because we're up to Blender 4.1 right now, which I have been using since like last night, right? I've been a little bit behind in updating my Blender, but here we are. I looked into the the patch notes. There's a lot of crazy things going on, a lot of stuff I love. I love my geo notes, so I absolutely loved what was going on in the patch notes, the things they added. So I'm just going to at least show you one node, right? I know you don't want to see all the geo node stuff. We're building a robot, right? We're going to continue that, of course. I promise you that we're going to do some rope physics as well that we left off with last time. So we got like 3 things we want to continue, right? So first things first, I will just show you. Let's just do the bake node in geo nodes, right? And let me just open up my. I will do this with Mosfy, I guess. A nice way to show it, and because it's a nice and heavy kind of simulation, I guess. If you have rotations and stuff like that. So I think you know Mosify, and the bake node is such an incredible addition to Blender's GeoNodes, right? So without this, I'm just gonna delete this for a sec. I can play this. It's going to be incredibly slow, right? Because I have plenty of water drops added to my mesh, and that make Mosify look good, right? And that's what I want to animate with some wind values. Right now it's incredibly slow. There was nothing really we could do about that in the past. Our viewport would just be slow, um, unless we decrease the viewport display amount, but it's already quite low, right? So it was something that was quite of a hassle. And now if we add, right, Blender 4.1, Shift A, we add a bake node. It's literally the easiest node in geometry nodes, I guess. We can just drag that anywhere in the geometry, anywhere we want to store information and have it baked, right? Something that doesn't have to recalculate every single time. And we can just drag and drop that in between. It's not going to do something right away because we have to bake it. And we can bake a still frame and an animation. So it doesn't have to be animated MOS, for example. You can do it on any GeoNode setup. If it slows down your viewport, if it slows down whatever, you can bake a still frame, right? Right now I can't really show that because everything is quite fast already. But with the animation, for example, right now it's incredibly slow. And we can actually just bake, for example. I will set this to like 50 because otherwise we're going to be here for a little while. All right, so baking takes a little bit of time. Bake, there we go. Let's see how fast it goes. Did I press bake? Yes, I bake a still frame. Let's bake the animation instead. There we go. It's still quite fast, right? You can see it's basically just playing through the animation at the speed it would play if you would just play the animation without a bake node, right? So it's going to play once, bake once, and then when we now play this, right, you'll be able to see that it's basically going to be a real time, right? So we got 26 FPS, 25, 24, a real-time animation of a mesh with a huge amount of instances, right? And that is just, in my opinion, something we needed so badly, right? Because otherwise your viewport will be slow the entire time you have something like this in your scene. And now you can add Modify or whatever GeoNode setup to a model, bake it, not have to worry about it anymore until you make some changes. So that is just beautiful. Now there are some other nodes as well that you will probably use at some point if you like GeoNodes. I'm not gonna go through all of them, but we should have an index switch node now, which is basically a switch, right, that we had before, like the usual switch. But if you would want to switch between like 3 things or 4 things, you would have to create incredible switch setups just to switch your geometry or your values. And now you can keep adding stuff, right? You got this little input ball that you can add stuff to, and then you can change the index. Let me just show you real quick, right? So let's say we got a little cube. Let's say we got a little cylinder, and we got a little cone and a torus, right? Then we can just, let's make the cube a new GeoNode setup. Here we go. And now we got that switch node, the index switch. And now we can just drag in all of these objects. Where did I store them? The cube, cylinder, torus, and what else that we have? I lost it. A cone should be somewhere. Where's the cone? There it is. Right? And then we can just connect all of these to that switch input. Number 1, number 2, number 3, right? And output. Right? So we should be able to, this is the object we currently are in, so that doesn't work. So if I set this to 1, we're going to have that cylinder. Number 2, we're going to have that cone. Number 3, torus. So this is a way to swap a lot of stuff in just one node, right? You can just set this to be a group input, and then you can just control that from there, right? So it's very useful, very nice. Other than that, an important one is just the rotation within GeoNodes, right? And I will show that with something that I created today. The road generator, right? You can see how it looks. This is going to be part of the Baked Blender Universe add-on, right? So you can just drag and drop triangle curves. Beautiful. That's not looking beautiful. There we go. Beautiful. That's going to be part of it. We got a little light pose. We got little guardrail stuff like that. Beautiful. Everything is going to be customizable, of course. Everything's procedural. You know, I like procedural stuff. I still have some things to tweak, but the foundation is here. And we got, where is it? So the rotation node is something that's new. I'm not sure why it's called that. It's like they just have double rotation, so they call it a rotation. Where is it? Rotation. Do I not even have it in here? I suppose not. But let's find an align Euler to vector node real quick. There we go. Let's see, which one is this? The light posts, right? For example, now usually when you want to rotate something, you either have a rotate vector, you have a vector rotate, you have to rotate Euler, you have to align Euler to vector. Quite a lot of interesting stuff, but it's not always the thing that is most common, not the thing that is most comprehensive. You know, you don't always know what to use. If I want to rotate these light posts around the the up axis, right? But usually your vector is going to be a little bit weird, and you will rotate it around multiple axes, right? Not only about the z-axis, and then you would have to actually rotate the instances here afterwards. But you can actually just rotate rotation now, right? It's a node with purple inputs, purple outputs, which means every type of rotation or vector is basically able to go in there. And I can just add that in between. And you can see it's still a little wonky, I guess. Depends on how it is set up. If I set this to local, perhaps, there we go, right? So I can set this to local, and it's gonna be rotating the rotation basically around the local axis, which is incredibly useful, right? So that is just a note I wanted to share real quick. Okay, so that will be that, I guess, for the new stuff. There's a lot of other things. One more, right? Active camera. Active camera, we talked about this in the Blender Universe chat in the Discord as well. It's an incredible note that we can use to grab the active camera location, position, and we can use that to create, for example, some, well, what is it called? Like level of details, LODs, things that are further away, that are lower geometry, things that are closer to the active camera are higher geometry. And previously you will be able to do that with just one camera, right? Which means that if you switch camera throughout your scene, there's going to be an issue, right? So now we have an active camera, which means that it's already automatically switching that camera, this object, out whenever it changes in your render, in your viewport as well, which is perfect, right? Because then your LODs will always work perfectly. And you can use this as well to always have your objects rotated to the camera, for example. And if you switch your camera, you can still have them rotated to your camera. Perfect for background objects, like, for example, trees, right? Just make them a plane. I guess the trees all the way in the back, you can make them a plane, and you can always have them rotated to the camera, which will make them look 3D, right? But they are in the background, so nobody cares. Beautiful. Now, let's go ahead and get a little bit into those rope physics that we were talking about last time, right? So, how do we approach that? Well, it's basically the same thing as we did last time, but there's a little thing we had to switch out, right? So let's say we got a little cube. This is our controller. I'm going to go to edit mode, set my cursor right at the bottom, right? So this is the thing that our rope is going to be attached to. And then I'm just going to add, I'm not going to add a curve, but I'm going to add a mesh. Reason why is because rope dynamics and cloth simulations, they work with a mesh, right? Easy as that. So let's add a little mesh, plane, and I'm gonna merge everything at the center. And I'm just gonna extrude this down, right? Because we need some more geometry. We need to create an actual rope that's gonna be dangling from the cube. So I'm just going to add some geometry, Control R, gonna add some loop cuts, there we go. And this is gonna be our rope geometry, right? This can be in any direction. This can be between two objects, but I wanna just have it dangling underneath my cube for now, all right? So for the robot, we could perhaps just add a little rope or cape even behind him, right? Because it's gonna be a cloth simulation, so it doesn't even have to be a rope. We just happen to use a cloth simulation for rope. We can use any object, right? It doesn't have to be a single strand. And this is already usable. So let me just show you how we approach that. So let's say this rope has to be attached to the cube. Then we need to hook it up to the cube somehow, right? And last time we went over that, how to create hooks. So in edit mode, we can select the vertex that we want to hook up to something. Press Alt-H or Control-H. There we go. Control-H is the one. Hook to new object, and we got a new empty, right? And then I'm just going to select my empty. Alt-Shift, select my cube, and Control-P, parent that to my object, right? That way, it's just going to be moving my cube. If I move my cube, it's also moving my empty, which is moving that first point of the rope, right? Beautiful. So right now, nothing happens because we don't actually have a simulation in place. We don't have a cloth simulation. So if we want to have that, so we can simply go to the physics tab and click the little cloth. There we go. Quite beautiful and quite easy. Now, of course, we have to pin this because if we play this, our rope is going to fall down infinitely, right? That's not something we want. So let's actually set up a pin group, right? You can do that by going to the shape and have a pin group there. For that, we need a vertex group, right? So we need to give Blender some indication of what vertex or multiple vertices we want to have pins, basically, that are not going to be moving. So we can go to the Data tab, Vertex Group Plus, and then in Edit mode, just select the top vertex and hit Assign there at the right. Hopefully you can read that. Assign. And there we go, right? So now if we play this, it's still falling because we haven't assigned it yet. Let's do that real quick. There we go. Pin group. So now it's not going to be falling. It's just going to stay in place. And let's just go back to the first frame and go to the modifier tab, right? So this order of modifiers is very important, right? And I think that's something we had wrong last time. If I crank this to the top, it's going to be doing the cloth simulation first, and then it's going to move that top vertex, right? Which is going to be not looking right, okay? So we actually need this hook modifier to come first because we want to have every movement we make with that cube, we want that we transfer it into the rope as well. All right. So that's just something that needs to be set up right. Always check your modifier order. It's very important. So if I play this animation and I move my cube now, we are actually getting a simulation of that rope, right? It's dangling left and right, following our object wherever it goes, right? And it works quite well in the viewport until it resets. And then we can animate the cube, for example, to go from left to right, up and down. The animation will be stored, right? So if I press I to insert a keyframe, it's automatically inserting a keyframe for everything, I guess, nowadays. For my rope, we're somehow baking this in the viewport as well when we play this. So let's just go to the cache and just delete all bakes. There we go. Should work. Not sure why it's still blue. Baking is always funny. It's always a funny thing. And then we can just, for example, animate this cube on frame 100 to go to the right. Insert a new keyframe. Now it's moving. Oh, our rope still has a bake for some reason. Hello. Just rebake, I guess. There we go. So that's actually animating that with the movement of our cube. Right, beautiful. It works well with animations as well. And if you have it set up properly with an armature, being the armature going before the cloth simulation, right? Remember movements before having the actual cloth simulation, then it's going to be working fine as well. Right, so I'm just going to delete my animation real quick because, of course, we also want to add some collision stuff, right? Which means that if I move this, hello, once again, we're baking. Lovely, lovely stuff. Delete this. Not sure why I can just turn automatic baking off. Perhaps it's somewhere. Should be. Well, let's just go with the flow, right? So if we want some collisions to happen, I'm going to add a plane that's going to count as our collision plane, right? So let's rename this to collision. And let's actually move this to a new collection with new collection, collision objects. There we go. Reason why is because if we set up a collision here, we need to add it to the cloth simulation as well. And if we do that, right, if we enable collisions, by default it's going to be enabled, but it's not going to have a collision collection, which is something we do want. So just select your collision objects there, which contains our little plane. And let's also enable self-collision, right? We don't want this to intersect with itself, especially when we give it some extra geometry, for example, some thickness. And that's just something we work with, right? So enable this, set the distance to a low value, 0.001. There we go. So now by default it won't work, of course, because we have a plane that doesn't have collisions. So just enable collisions there, and now we should be able to just change all of these settings, right? We can give it some stickiness, and that just depends on the properties that you're looking for your curve, right? So we can select this cloth object, and we have a lot of stiffness up here as well, and we have some pressure as well, right? So if you would, for example, make a cable sliding over dirt, you need more friction. If it's gonna be like a rope gliding over ice, you would of course have the friction a lot lower, right? So that's pretty much self-explanatory, I guess. So right now we have everything set up and everything should work, right? So if I just move this down, our cloth should be interacting with that ground, which it isn't. Amazing. Let's see what we did wrong. We have got a collision here. This should all be good in the cloth simulation. Why is this not happening? Check collisions, collision objects, self collisions. Just gonna up this for a sec. You know, just in case. Just in case. Let's see. Collision. Single-sided. Let's check this off for a sec. Let's see what happens. So it's still going through. Amazing. See, you always have stuff like this. When I tested this out, did everything the same. Worked fine. Now you do it. Works bad, right? So just delete this. Oh, that's the wrong one. I'm gonna give this a little bit of thickness. Perhaps that's the issue. Collision. Let's see. Well, interesting. Let's go over this real quick. See if there's something I'm doing wrong. Or if it's something I just have no control over. Just like our baking, which is not fun at all. Object collisions, we can turn this down, but I don't think it will be making a difference. Object collision should be working. Collision objects. There we go. Should be working. Not sure why this is being silly. Perhaps it's working with animation. Well, I'm not gonna go into that right now, because we still want to add some of this to a robot. So, in the next tutorial, the next video, I will be giving you a little fix for that. All right, so I'm gonna open my other model, which is somewhere in my folder here. Here we go. Little robot. So let's say we want to add some ropes to this little guy. All right. So the thing we went for first was a little string going from our finger into our object. Now, I'm not going to add any physics to that because it's too small, right? Too small. I will just parent this to a weight, to an armature weight, right? Which means it's going to be working quite properly as well. But let's actually add some physics to our robot, right? Everything is a solid material. Everything is rigid. Everything is very, very hard, right? Everything is a hard surface. So let's add some flexibility to spots so it's at least looking a little bit more organic, right? And I think that's always a nice combination to have, combine rigid object with some more flexible. So I'm going to, should we add a cape? Or should we add some, I think it would be cool to add some like tube systems from the back, stuff that's used to fuel it perhaps. So let's add a vertex there, back on a head. Let's hit Shift A, add a circle, scale this down, RY 90, scale it down there. I want it to be. Now remember, we could just use a little shrink wrap modifier. I'm not sure why everything is looking a little weirder. I think it is because Blender recently switched to a new auto smooth system, which is interesting, right? It's something I haven't really played around with. For some reason, there are 2 auto smooth modifiers on every object there is, right? Blender 4.1 also comes with some hassle, I guess, for files you created in 4.0. Right, so there is now an auto smooth modifier, geometry node modifier, as you can see, and it is actually removed from the data tab here, right? So usually it was under geometry data, I think. And we will have an option called normals, our auto smooth, and now it's gone, and we do it in the modifier panel with an auto smooth modifier, right? So I think whenever you have an object, for example, a Suzanne, and we auto smooth this, shade smooth by angle, we are ready. We're not getting a modifier. It's auto smooth. So why? That's interesting. That is interesting. So for one object, we're getting a modifier. For the other, we're not. Right. Interesting stuff that I'll definitely have a look at. So for this one, we have a modifier. And that's something I read in the, and it changed as well. That it's now done with an actual node group to auto smooth, right? And you can control the angle and stuff like that. So I'm guessing that's why everything is looking a little bit weird. We got double things, right? But let's just continue. Carry on with a shrink wrap modifier. Shrink wrap and shrink wrap it to our actual head. Now remember, I usually use the project because we end up with a cleaner shape. So set it on project. And let's set this to be the negative X direction, I think. Negative X. Or the positive Z. All right, so we rotated this, so it's a little weird. Just apply that in edit mode. Let's extrude this a little bit right that. And select everything, press E, escape, Alt S, and scale it down a little bit with proportional editing off. There we go. Now I want a cable, so I'm going to select this inner edge there. Or actually, let's just do this one. Shift D, Escape P selection. There we go. And we can now fill this up. Oh, let's not even fill it up, I guess. And then in the side view, we could just extrude this a little bit down. This is a very thick cable. Let's see if it's actually going to get the cloth simulation or not. We'll see. Perhaps we made it. Perhaps we overkilled this a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit of geometry to some edges like that. Beautiful. Beveling. Bevel everything. Control B. Right? Amazing. We could also have subdivided. Doesn't matter. Shade smooth. Beautiful. Right, so now we want to pin this as well, right? So this is going to be the place where we pin. Let's rotate this just a little bit like that. Go to the data, vertex group plus, assign, and let's just name this pin, right? Pin. There we go. And now we can add a little cloth modifier. Cloth. And say we want a pin group. And we want collations to be enabled for self collations as well. 0.0001. There we go. Right. So if you would play this animation, if everything is going well, we should be able to just tell that this is falling down. There we go. Right. So right now, it's going a little bit like garbage because there is no internal pressure whatsoever. Right. There's no real tension on the cable, so to speak. So there's a lot of parameters we can actually change, like tension, compression, shear, bending. I think the easiest one is to add some pressure. Let's see. There's already looking a little bit better. Perhaps not even enough. Let's set this to 3. You can see that right now it is sticking to the shape of a cable a lot more, right? And it's still falling down, which is beautiful. All right, so I'm not sure which exact settings I would use. It's going to take some while to actually go through these and get these right. So perhaps that's something for the next one where I just test that beforehand and give you the values, right? Tell you a little bit more about that. But for now, we got a cable that's falling down, right? And that is perfect if our robot's gonna be walking and it's gonna be dragging behind him, right? So I would even add some more geometry there, right? So it's gonna actually fall on a ground surface later on. Add some geometry. And then after the cloth modifier, I would actually add a little subdivision modifier as well. Right, set that to 1, just so to make it a bit smoother. Right, so the cable falls quite nicely. This is still quite a thin cable. You can see it bending there. Something we can change later. All right, so right away, that is looking quite nice, but it's not parented. It's not really going with our robot yet. So, right, so that is where we need to follow the steps we did before with the single strand of rope. So how do we do that? Well, let's once again hook these vertices to a new object, Control H, hook to new object, empty, beautiful. I'm gonna parent that to our starting point of the rope, Control P object, and this object, auto smooth, we can parent to the bone, right? So Alt H to get that back. Now select that object, hold Shift, select your armature, tab, select your top bone, your head bone, that's where it's gonna be parented to, tab, Control P, and set parent to object. No, that's the wrong one, parent to bone. There we go. Right, so if we play this, it's falling, and it should be able to now rotate our pose, and it's rotating our cable. Did we not parent the head to that as well? What's going on here? Oh my god, okay. I think because it got deleted at some point. Let's just parent the head real quick. Select objects. Control P, bone. Right, let's keep transform, make sure nothing moves. And then when we play that and we move our head backwards or forwards, our cable is moving too. Let's actually see. We need our hook before the cloth. Remember, the modifier stack really matters. When we play this now, we should be able to get physics, right? So you can see it's moving quite nicely. It's still very flimsy, a flimsy cable. We'll fix that later. But you could see that this is going to follow our animation of the armature as well, which is perfect, right? So we don't really have to do anything except animate our robot, play the animation, have our cloth simulation bake, and then this rope will follow him, right? So all we need to do, that's going to be for next time, is we will set up the collisions, right? Have it collide with the backpack, have it collide with the ground, have it collide with every small object in between as well, right? Everything that needs to collide, we will have to collide. And if it's too small, we will just set up a collision object, right? A collider object, something that has lower geometry, is a little bit bigger, that can be used to estimate a collision, right? So I will leave it at that, because there's some stuff that I will have a look at myself, come back to you guys in the next one. I like the perfect settings for this little rope. I like the collision settings, right? Some things that just need some tweaking. All right. Are there any questions about that? Any questions at all about ropes, about hooking, about the new updates, perhaps in the geometry nodes, the Blender 4.1 stuff, or if you would like me to go through the other stuff as well, then let me know that too, right? I'd be more than happy to just walk you through some of the new changes, explain what they do and how they change the way we can use Blender. Anything at all? Yeah, that's what we do, Baked. Hey, I'm Apple.
Not so much questions, yeah, only when I was looking, every time the baking, and I think this is maybe the problem for why you cannot make this collision work, yeah, because it bake before you can make the collision work make good, I think. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, perhaps. I'm not sure. I think I tested it yesterday in Blender 4.0, and it worked exactly the same way as I just did it. I'm guessing in 4.1 it automatically perhaps bakes it, like you said, or something else changed, but it does seem like 4.1 is a little bit different with the cloth sim as well, so I'll have to look into the patch notes again.
With the first animation you did, yeah, you needed to press a lot of times delete the baking, yeah, and then it was working good. I think maybe somewhere lying in this solution, but maybe. It's a maybe because it's a wild thing, Blender 4.1, I already see.
Yeah, it's an amazing piece of work. A lot of new additions. But yeah, I'll have to take a look at why that is not working. I'm guessing they did change just a little something, you know.
But yeah, the cloth, this is pretty interesting, and maybe in the future you can give one or two small tutorials about more about making cloths and capes and stuff like this. I think this also would be interesting material.
Yeah, that's a good one. We'll definitely do that, and perhaps we'll even add a little clothing piece on our robot just to explain that. You know, if there's if you'd be interested in that and other people as well, then we can definitely do that.
Nice. Thank you, sir, for the awesome class. For the rest, I don't have no questions, so thank you a lot.
No worries. Thank you all for being here with me, for listening. And then I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, have a good one. Bye bye.